Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We're going to get started. Today, the webinar is Next Gen Special Education Platform to support your teachers. Now, this is a very timely webinar because we just got back from CEC in Louisville, and where we had a great time talking with lots of special educators. And I think a lot of you were at that show, and so I might have met some of you. Looking forward to your interactions at the end of the webinar. So I'm going to go ahead. It's a very action-packed webinar. I'm going to be talking about our system, and then we're going to do a demo. And then afterwards, we'll take your questions. So you can go ahead and enter in your questions into the chat box, and we'll go ahead and get started. So again, today my name is Richard Capone. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Let's Go Learn, and I may have met some of you in Louisville a couple weeks ago. So I'm really looking forward to this webinar. Here's the agenda real quickly. I'm just going to give you a quick background on Let's Go Learn, and then I'm going to talk about the challenges facing special education. And this is a lot of the stuff we were hearing at the conference. And then we're going to talk a little bit about technology. And then finally, we're going to go into a system demo. And of course, obviously, I'm going to be explaining the Let's Go Learn system here as well. So first of all, I founded the company with Dr. McCollum, who ran the Reading Credential program at UC Berkeley back in 2000. And at the time, we launched in 2001 a reading assessment. It was a computer adaptive assessment before that term even existed. And it actually ran on a 28.8 modem. So imagine that, right? So we've been doing this a long time. And early on, we realized students are not single scores. You need an assessment that actually tells you why is a student struggling, and that is exactly what special educators need from an assessment tool. Let me transition to talking a little bit about some of the challenges that are facing special education departments. And of course, you're going to agree with me when you hear these. But first of all, teacher shortages, right? It's a huge issue right now. And what it means is it requires faster onboarding when you have new teachers come into your schools or districts. It also means that sometimes some teachers may have some emergency credentials, so maybe they haven't had as much teacher ed training or as much certifications. So that's really an important issue. The next thing is a lot of the assessments out there are focused more on benchmark testing as opposed to assessment for special education. And so this is a challenge, right? Assessments like NWEA, iReady Star, et cetera. A lot of these are really focused on general ed, trying to say is a student at, above, or below grade level. They're not necessarily giving you the detailed data, and they're going to be disconnected from your progress monitoring. And so that's a big challenge, right? Another thing is we're hearing is IEP writing is laborious and requires a lot of expertise. And so this gets back to the whole teacher shortage. You may have a lot of great teachers, but if you don't have enough of them or their caseloads are too high, it becomes very difficult. The next one is goal setting. It's hard because it requires good data, right? So if you have to have the time to do the assessments, you have to have time to find students' present levels. And so this is a challenge when there's a lot of pressure on time. And how do you get those goals, short-term objectives for the students written in an efficient manner? All right, and this last one I think is sort of interesting. It's a lack of continuity between general ed, intervention, and special education. And so this is an issue when people aren't using the same vocabulary, when they're talking is the problem. So we're going to address that a little bit too. So in this demo, this action-packed demo, we're going to talk about how Let's Go Learn could support you in all of these areas. Now, before I get into some of this, I do want to talk about some positive factors, which I think it's nice to be positive, right? On a positive level, when you look at things, there's a lot of cloud-based tools out there that really help school districts get organized, and that means you. When I ask people, how many of you have an intranet at your district where you can maintain your own intranet? Ironically, only about 30% of the districts we talk to say they have an intranet that they can maintain themselves. You know, you need these. If you don't have one yet, it's something you may want to think about because you need a way to have scalability and be able to show like what's your process, what's your articulation process. And this is really important for high fidelity implementations, right? How do you make your processes better? Another thing is technology is much more advanced. Of course, technology advances, but what I mean by that is that it's getting better, right? Don't underestimate, a lot of times there's a lag. We get used to these old technologies and we don't have to settle for the old assessments, right? The old assessments, of course, are assessments that are summative only. A lot of districts buy MAP, right? And that goal of it is to say, is students at, above, or below? How are they going to do the state test? You don't need to settle for an assessment that just gives you summative data. You could go beyond that, right? Another thing is SDI, specially designed instruction. It's really good today, right? It's getting better. And a lot of it is with the integration of data into SDI. It means you have real-time personalized learning, which is what the teacher does, but this is a supplemental tool for the teacher as well. The other thing is, I think people a lot of times think, oh, we just adopted an assessment, right? Well, I'll tell you what, once you adopted an assessment, The second assessment that you upgrade to is a lot easier, right? The first technology tool you adopt is hard. Most school districts nowadays are using technology tools, so don't underestimate your teachers. They're using technology in their everyday life, so it is easier to make some of the changes. All right, let's jump in. What is Let's Go Learn? So at our heart, we are a diagnostic assessment system. You look across the top band there, we have a reading and math assessment. Now, I can't stress this enough. Our assessments are hardcore diagnostic. They're granular. If you take an assessment and you really break things down for the students, find out exactly where they're strong and weak, find out exactly instructional points, present levels, that's really important. That data then goes into our engine. That engine creates reports. It helps the teacher write the IEP, set the goals. The teacher can assign lessons based on what they want, or they could use the fully automated lessons at the bottom that are generated. These are gap-focused SDI courses in math and reading. Every student gets it automatically when they take an assessment. So you don't even have to think about it. It's there. Now, the other big piece that's really important is formative assessment. Our formative assessment is completely compatible with our original diagnostic. So you take the diagnostic, and any quiz you give, data lays on top of the baseline and adjusts it. So you don't have to do a mid-year test or a end-of-year test to have progress monitoring against your baseline. This is a vertically aligned data set, and I'll talk about that later, but that's really, really very powerful, and I don't know anyone else who uses a data set like we do. So it's one of our competitive advantages. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is general ed, intervention, and special education. Our data will help all departments, and it goes through all of them. So while you are in the special education department, probably you may be using our assessments and our detailed reports to write your IEPs, to get your narrative class, progress monitoring. The great thing is our stuff works in intervention. It works in general ed. The difference is they will administer an assessment maybe, but they're not going to use all the reports you're using. So in general ed, they're probably going to use a summary report. Maybe they're going to run the report across the entire school to see summatively how are people doing by grade level, at, above, or below. MTSS, RTI intervention, they may be using the diagnostic reports to do a personalized prescription, as well as providing the intervention. And then special ed case, of course, you have a more detailed use of it. But the good thing is, same data, same tool. Even if you're starting off in special education, it could actually roll into intervention and eventually roll into general ed. Okay, so this is important. All right, so how does our technology support you? This is just how it works in practice. You have a diagnostic assessment, right? You give the diagnostic assessment at the beginning of the year. You use that data in special education to find all your present levels. There's some narrative text as well you could use in your PLAF. Once you have that assessment, then you go into the reports in step 2, and you can write those short-term goals, right? It's giving you a lot more detailed. And for those new teachers or the teachers with high caseload, this is huge. Our customers tell us they're saving 50% time in writing IEPs and setting goals. And they also feel more confident in the data, and that's more accurate. This is really huge. Step 3 is you take that data, automatically it creates a gap-focused SDI course for your students. So you put them in there supplementally, or maybe they're in inclusion. And so while they're in the regular math or reading class, they can also do some Let's Go Learn. So that way they're getting supplemented and brought up the level. But you can also, the teacher, use the data and assign courses however they want. Next step, step 4 is, this is really amazing. All the quizzes are pre-made. So you want to test 3-digit by 2-digit multiplication, long vowel, you want to do 5th grade comprehension. Any quiz you assign, the teacher takes it. The student takes it. If they have mastery, that data automatically lies on top of the diagnostic baseline data, and that's why it gives you one-click progress monitoring. The teacher just administers the quiz to the student, or the student takes it online, and then they just go in there and hit, show me the data, let me see. So it's really amazing. And then of course, the other piece is professional development. That's where our customer success department comes in. We realize that everything has to be bite-sized training. So initial product development, how to use the product, how to assess kids, how to run reports, how to write an IEP, how to write goals, how to put students into SDI. We break it up into chunks. Okay. All right. Next thing, the secret sauce, right? How does why Let's Go Learn works? So this is the fundamental reason why we're different. We are built on a diagnostic model of assessment. Most assessments are standards, grade level standards based. So when you take a 4th grade assessment, they're giving you fourth grade items, maybe some third grade items, but they give you a sliver of items. And when they're done, all they know is if you're above, at, or below, right? We're different. We actually stack every single subtest is stacked set of skills and concepts, and we break it into lots of subtests. So math has 44 subtests, reading has 7. But let me show you. If we take a look at place value, for instance, so our assessment goes through and finds the students' present levels across all these different things. It goes up and down, adjusts. If we break out place value, you'll see place value technically is ones and tens recognition, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, expanded form, and then above that it's thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and then it's decimal place value, right? This student is right here. We definitively know they're there. We tested them with a set of items and they have mastered it. So the next skill you would teach them is right here. Imagine having this across all the subtests, an assessment that is built on sets of skills and concepts. That is fundamentally what we do. And that's why it's very different. And once you design an assessment like this, everything falls into place, okay? Same thing in reading, a little less subtests. You got high frequency words, phonics, word recognition, spelling, vocabulary, and comprehension. All right, where we excel in special education. So I sort of just explained all this stuff. PLAFs, narrative-based, establishing baselines, progress monitoring, deficit-based SDI. We support the extended school year, and of course, compliance. And so it's really, it's the full gamut. Now, let me talk real quickly about EDGE 3.0, our instruction, before I jump into the demo and show you what everything looks like. In order to have really good instruction that's online and helping at-risk and non-traditional learners, it's important you have a model. How do we teach students, right? And it breaks, and this is the model we use. We're looking at cognitive load, we're looking at student motivation, and we're looking at student engagement. If you can optimize all three of these and have features that support all three of these, you optimize learning for a student. And what does that mean? Let me jump into this little table right here, which is interesting. This is our approach to accelerate learning. So first of all, I just talked about our assessment. When each student has a very accurate assessment, it gives students lessons at the right level. This reduces cognitive load, right? If you make it too hard, it stresses them out. It's harder for them to learn. If it's too easy, well, that's another issue. Then they lose some motivation. The next thing is lessons are culturally relevant. So we're using characters in our lessons that are diverse. You know, we have, we're trying to use different topics in it as well. And that helps improve motivation as well as increases engagement and inclusiveness. So having cultural relevancy, all right? The next feature is music. We use music in most of our lessons. Not every single one, but almost all of them have some kind of custom song written. And music is actually quite amazing because it actually helps in all three areas. Reduces cognitive load. If you can learn something, not just seeing it or having text, but also hearing music, that helps. Makes it easier to understand it. But also, that's how we learn nowadays, right? People are using TikTok. They're listening to music all the time. So it's much more motivating. And of course, it increases engagement, right? So it really hits all three areas. Another one I want to mention is voice, stress, and intonation. So our narrator, when they're talking about stuff, they're talking about rise over run. You know, they're using intonation. Again, that reduces cognitive load. You don't want to just have this monotone voice who's talking about, you know, I'm going to be talking about Pythagorean theorem, right? You need to have something that's more engaging, and that's always really, really good and reduces cognitive load. The next factor is multiple modes of learning in UI. So what this means, again, if I want to learn about what a right triangle is, I don't want to just hear about it. I want to see it. I want to have visualization. You want animations. So that really helps reduce cognitive load because you're seeing it. Also, it makes it more engaging for students because it's more exciting, right? Now, finally, within each of our explicit lessons, at the end of it, we go into a gamification mode where there's actually practice. And that improves motivation, increases engagement because students like earning points. They get badges. They want to get higher scores. They're encouraged to go back and relearn something if they haven't quite nailed it down. So that's an important part too. Okay, system demo. So let me go ahead and jump into the demo right now. So here's my screen. I am logged into a demo account. So this is live student data, but their names have been obfuscated. I like working with live data because it's realistic, right? But like I said, again, all the names have been changed to protect privacy. All right, so we're logged into the system. We're going to assume that students have already taken an assessment. I'm going to go to a math page, or I'll go to a reading page first. And we come over here and we see these are our reading scores: high frequency words, word recognition, phonics, phonemic awareness, spelling, vocabulary, comprehension. You notice we see a bunch of scores. So our scores are basically grade level scores, so it's easy to understand. So in high frequency words, this student is a 3.83. It's green, means they've maxed out the highest score. 3.17 in word recognition. The phonics is 0. So they don't even know beginning sounds. So we could see how this looks, right? So it's interesting. All the data's there. Now we have lots of really incredible reports, but let me show you one thing that's interesting with this one class. So if I went over here to phonics and I said phonics instructional placement, right here is the scope and sequence of how you teach phonics. If these students have mastered phonics, these students are working on beginning sounds. These 4 students are working on multiple syllables, and this one student's working on R-controlled vowels. So we see our class. This is for a small group. It could be used for inclusion. Instantly we have this report, right? As soon as they finish an assessment, which is really good. Now, also in terms of some reports, I'm going to go ahead and let's take a look at one of our reports. Well, first of all, I'll just look at our summary report here. So I'll go ahead and I'll say with scores. So this is a great summary report. Again, it just sort of breaks out the areas. You see the check boxes. You see, okay, the student is good in these areas. High frequency word, rec, and phonics. We can see all the phonics principles they've mastered. They're working on this multi-syllable. But then we see the areas we need to focus on: spelling, oral vocabulary, and reading comprehension. So this gives you an idea. This is a summary report. We have a detailed report that has more narratives and so on and so forth. But before I mentioned, you have different level reports. Sometimes you want a summary report. Sometimes you want a detailed report. If I wanted a more detailed report, like right here, I might want to go to special education. And here, I can start using this to get my present levels, but also I have a great narrative right here for the student. So this was actually written for the student based on their data. So it exactly talks about the nature of how Eric is good in decoding, but he's lower in these other areas, and what does that mean? So this is a great place to start. I could go ahead and copy that text and then tweak it and use it in my IEP, my present levels. Also, of course, I can drill down and start taking a look at some more detailed stuff. But let me go ahead and just toggle over to math, because math is a little bit more skills-based, so it actually gets crazier, and I think most people have a harder time in math in terms of writing some of their goals, so I'm going to show that. So right here, initially, I'm on the math page. We see our strand scores. Now, this is what you see in assessments like, I think, iReady and MAP, but these are still summative scores, by the way, right? Numbers and operations doesn't tell me what to do. Measurement, data, geometry, algebra. So what I want to do is break it down even further. So let's take it Rianne. And what I could do is I could just click on numbers and operations, and now we see, oh boy, look at all this. Here's all the score, here's all of the subtests, right? So we see all the scores. So again, I could break these out, sort my class. Let's take a look at place value, because before I did that. Now here's my class in the scope and sequence of place value. These students have mastered it. These 4 students are working in 2-digit. These 4 students are working in 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. And these students have mastered everything except decimal place value, which turns out to be a big hang up for a lot of students. So, okay, I see that. That's great. So now let me go back over here. I'm going to go ahead, though, go into the special education report, because this is where I think it's really amazing. So I take this student, and I'm looking at it, and I may decide, and this is where we're going to train your teachers on how to do this. So and part of it is for us to train it and integrate it into your own process. So I look at this and say, okay, here is Rianne's scores. She's a little low, number of operations, measurements a little higher, but I'm going to focus on measure operation, because I know that's probably one of the most important ones. So maybe I decide I'm going to set my goal. And this is, we're going to say, well, number of operations, 3.5. Our goal is to get it to 5.5 by the end of the year. That's 2 years gain. Okay, we could do that. So I can grab these scores. And what I'm going to do is go into numbers and operations. Initially, when I write my class, I want to look at some present levels. So by default, it's present levels. And we see this here. Rianne can correctly round. Great. Rianne can identify place value up to 3-digit numbers. Super. We see all this different stuff. These are some great present levels. So I can go ahead and copy these. If I wanted to include grade level scores or standards, I can go ahead and refresh it. And so this text can have some additional information. So you have all that there. That's where you could use that into your report. But now the next piece I may want to do is, okay, now I want to shift into setting goals. So above the present level are the skills you need to work on. So I'm going to say, I want to take a look at 3 skills, refresh. Now the way I would do it is I would say I would start targeting the lowest skills first, right? So Rianne's doing really well in numbers. She's a fifth grader, but she's pretty good there, pretty good in place value. Where we're seeing lower is in comparing and ordering. Yeah, comparing order, division, and fraction. So I might choose those three. Now, specifically, these are my goals. Rianne will compare single-digit numbers. Rianne will compare two-digit numbers using appropriate symbols. Rianne will compare three-digit numbers. So if I teach her these three skills, I'm going to take her in comparing and ordering from 0.9 to 2.9. So this is the stuff I may put into my next marking period. It's those three right there. And then maybe I'm going to do some division. I'll grab these two skills and we'll do some fractions. That's it. So those are my 8 goals. I'll go ahead and copy this. I'll paste those in my goals. I'll delete the ones I don't want and focus on the ones I want. And now I'm set. This is all based on her data. So this is powerful. Now here's a great thing. Over time, as we move forward and we say Rianne's working on it, let's say I want to go ahead and quiz something on her. So I could say, all right, so let's go ahead and let's add a quiz for her. So I want to go over here and I want to grab a quiz. So I'm going to say, okay, comparing using symbols two-digit. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I could go ahead, grab this quiz and queue this up for her specifically. That's it. Next time she logs in, she sees she has some quizzes. She takes it. So after I teach her, I queue up the right quiz. And as soon as she does it, we come back over to our scores and reports. And I'm actually just going to randomly click on one of these students here. And so now what happens is over time, numbers and operations, I want to take a look at this. I can go ahead and say, okay, I can grab some of these things and then I can go ahead and just chart it. So as soon as I take a quiz, it now is starting to compare it. In this particular student, we see 4 scores, comparing and ordering, and then it went up, right? Place value. So anyways, you have different data you can look at and so on and so forth. But this is the idea, is that when you have all this data here, everything's compatible. You don't have to think about it and it's automatically available. Okay, that was sort of a whirlwind. I realize you all have more questions or you want to have one of us share this with your team. You can go ahead and let us know, send us an email. What I'm going to do now is, before I stop, here's my email address. And also what you guys can do is send me an email. You can go on our website, say click on any button that says talk to an expert. We can set up a demo for you and your teams. Now let me actually do a couple questions. We have a few minutes time left. Let's see, we've got about 4 minutes. And let me look at my second monitor here. Okay, so I see a question. We use iReady and we're not happy with the data it produces. I hear that a lot. How specifically does your assessment differ? Okay, so iReady, I mean, hey, it's a great assessment for what it does, but it's not always going to be as good for special educators. And so the reason why it's data is it scores, like let's take a look at math. I think it produces like 4 scores and a total score. Well, that's not enough to identify present levels. Like it has a numbers and operations score, and it's something like a 576, which doesn't tell you what to do next. So the difference is, for us, numbers and operations is 14 scores. Now it's not going to be 14 scores for a kindergartner, but let's say 7th grader. It's going to be numbers, place values, addition of whole number, subtraction of whole number, multiplication of whole number. And within each of those, we have a grade level score, and each one is tied to a specific skill concept, and that's your present level. And above that skill concept is your goals, your next step. So that is why we're different. It's because our scores are more granular, and we're built on a diagnostic model of assessment as opposed to a grade level standards model of assessment. Hope that makes sense. All right, next question. You mentioned that Dora and Adam are based on a vertically aligned score. What does that mean? How does it compare to MAP score? Okay, that's sort of a little bit related to that question. So the difference, our vertical alignment is based on the skills and concepts. So that's why if somebody is a kindergarten, they take our assessment, then they go to 1st grade, 2nd grade, and they go throughout their whole K-12 experience, it's the same scale. So they're just moving up and down that same scale. And so that's why our vertically aligned data set is natively a grade level score, as opposed to someone taking some 5th grade items and you're getting a score of 576. And then next year you take a 6th grade set of items and those give you another score. Those are scaled through arithmetic calculations, right? So it's sort of like the state test. Oh, this year I was 750. Next year I take a different form since I'm in a higher grade, and now I'm 760. In theory, that 10-point increase means I improve relative to my grade level, but it's been calculated by mathematics where we're just calculated criterion reference by scores. So there's no interpretation. You don't have to worry about misinterpretation. It's going to be right all the time. I hope that makes sense. Let me take a look. Let me see. Ooh, we have 2 more minutes. Okay, so another question is, this looks like a complicated system. You know, can my team really learn to use it quickly? Okay, yes, it's a deep product, but here's the way you would start. Our CSS team, customer success department, they would initially do a 30-minute training on how do I log students on, queue them up for a test, and test them. And we do that. Once they test it, then we have a second training, like after your first testing window, says, how do I look at my data? And we just show you how to look at the data. And then maybe the next one would be, how do I write IEPs with this data? And that's where I take a little bit of pre-planning with us, with you, and saying, okay, what is your IEP process? You know, how do you generally write your PLAFs? And then we'll figure that out with you ahead of time. And then when we do the training, we say, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to use this narrative paragraph. You're going to, you know, put it into your IEP, you know, sandbox or text field, and then you're going to write a little bit about the student, talk about some of their interests, and then you'll have our paragraph, which will talk about how they're reading. And so we step through that process, right? So when you break it up into tasks, it's really about 3 to 4, you know, mini trainings, and your teachers are up and running. And we also have videos a la carte. So when you log in our system, we have these videos that show each of these steps. So even if somebody missed the initial training, or a new teacher comes on, you know, 2 months into the school year, we can put them in and they could do it. The other thing we do for a lot of larger implementations is we have open office hours. So there's a lot of things we do. We understand that support's really important. And it's not about the tool. I learned this 20 years ago. I remember a principal at Martin Luther King Junior Elementary in Berkeley said to me, Richard, it's not about the tool, it's about the implementation. And that has rung true for me these past 20 years. I realize it is so true, right? As a company, our job is to partner with you because we know it's not just about a tool, it's about full operationalization of something. How do we make it work from A to Z? All right, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much. Appreciate your questions. And again, feel free to send us emails, ping us. We're happy to have a discussion with you. Thank you so much.